think it's something we all need to remember. Okay, and then moving on, we're gonna go on to the roll call now, and I will call out the judicatories, and Holly will write your attendance down. So we want to give her a couple seconds if you have multiple people. Ariel, very nice seeing you. You're like very big on my screen.
Oh,
Okay, so we're gonna go with American Baptist Churches.
Here.
My friend Mark's there. Okay, and now we're going to Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
here.
Thank you,
Here.
Kat.
Could you,
Karen
could you say,
Martin,
could you say your name, not just here, please? So Karen Martin.
Pat Whitford,
Lee Wilson.
Lee Wilson. Okay.
Bob Earson's here. He's muted, and Andrew Musgrave.
Yeah. Here.
So was that a total of 5?
I
Also,
had
Joan-
I had 4: Bob Ursom, Lee Wilson, Andrew Musgrave, Karen Martin, and and Pat Whitberg.
Okay.
and Joan, someone named Joan is
Oh,
there. She's muted.
Oh yeah,
though.
Joan. Hi, Joan. My graduate school friend.
And my last name is Cook, C-O-O-K.
Thanks,
Hi,
Joan.
Joan. Welcome. Okay, now we're going on to the Cincinnati Islamic Community Center. No? Okay. Disciples of Christ, Southwest Ohio.
Dave Titsor.
Earl Coggins,
Thomas Barnes.
Dave, Cheryl, and Thomas. Welcome. Okay. JCRC of the Jewish Federation.
Jeremy Spiegel, apologies for I have a bad connection, but I'm here off camera.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anyone else from JCRC?
Just me.
Okay. Great Miami River District, United Methodist Church. The Presbytery of
Oh,
Cincinnati.
Hold on, you might need to unmute yourselves. Because I know Jan is here, Jan Seymour.
Oh, for the Great Miami River District.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got
So-
Jan.
Okay, must be just Jan.
Okay. All right. Presbytery of Cincinnati.
Well, I'm Maggie Shreve, but I don't represent the Presbytery. I represent Knox Presbyterian Church.
Okay. Any other representatives of the Presbytery of Cincinnati? Okay. Religious Society of Friends of Greater Cincinnati.
Carol Burks.
Doug Burks.
Nan Hatch.
Jody Harris,
So
Okay,
Doug Burks, Carol Burks, Nan Hatch, Jody Harris.
there were 4.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati.
Bob Lamb.
Dan
Carol
Schneider.
Fensel.
Okay, slow down 1 minute. Okay, we got Bob Lamb,
Dan Schneider.
Dan Schneider.
Carol Fensel and Dick Fensel.
Hi, Carol and Dick.
Martha Walker,
Carol Wommeldorf.
Hey, Carol.
Hey, Roellen.
Hey, Ro, I represent the Episcopal Diocese of Southern Ohio.
Yeah, we skipped over the Episcopalians, the Diocese of Southern Ohio.
Oh,
that would be
I
Ariel
thought
Miller.
I said it. I'm sorry. Diocese of Southern Ohio. Episcopal.
Ariel Miller,
Sorry, Ariel, and I even called you out.
yep, I'll try to behave.
I don't know. I have you and Carol on together. It might be rough. Okay, so now I think we're on to the no, we already did Unitarian, right?
Yeah.
So United Church of Christ, Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky. No one? Okay. Volunteers of America, that would be me. That's my list. We must be leaving people out. There, I must not have a complete list because not everyone said
And
they
then
were.
guests.
Okay. All right. So are we,
While I was on
got
the-
everybody, Holly?
Yeah, if we could just identify the guests.
So
Samantha Searls from Ignite Peace.
So you got me as the Methodist person when I was on the phone, Holly.
We got you, Jan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd throw Samantha in there. I'd make her play double.
Dr. Ford?
Yes, Robin Ford, formerly Baptist Ministers Conference, guest.
I'm Brewster Rhodes. I'm a guest. I'm just very interested in the topic today, so thanks for letting me join y'all.
Hey, Brewster.
Hey, Robin, how you doing?
Brewster, do you belong to a particular organization at all, or it's okay if not?
No,
Just wondering.
Yeah, not well. I'm the Adventure Crew, Ohio River Way, Mill Creek Alliance, Innovation Ohio, Ohio Environmental Council. That's it.
Okay.
He's not doing
Brewster
any
belongs to everybody.
Yeah.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
And I think I saw Brooke.
Yes. Hi, my name is Brooke Meyer, and I work for the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library.
I'm glad you got my message before.
Yes, thank you
Brooke,
for that.
What's your last name again, Brooke?
Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have Samantha, Dr. Robin Ford, Brewster Rhodes, Brooke Meyer.
I'd like to also invite my graduate student intern, Hannah. Do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, my name is Hannah. I'm going to be listening in as an intern at Night Peace.
Thank you, Hannah.
Welcome, Hannah. Okay, do you have everyone now for the roll call, Holly?
I think so. Thanks, everybody.
Great job, Holly. Thank you. Okay, I hope everyone's had a chance to look over the December 11th meeting minutes for our Delegates Council. Are there any changes, deletions, additions to the meeting minutes? Dan, did you just wave your hand?
I did not mean to if I did.
Not Daniel, Dan Schneider. I thought I saw him move. Okay. Okay. All right, hearing none, the meeting minutes for December 11th Delegate Council is so approved. And I hope everyone had a chance to look at today's wonderful agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections? Okay, hearing none, our meeting agenda is approved. Okay. And next up is Daniel, our Mark Executive Director, who's going to give us some updates. It's all yours, Daniel.
Great. Thank you, Rowan, and I will be very brief so that we can get to the focus of our meeting today. So just very quickly, as many of you know, we are in the process of kind of strategic visioning as Mark, and also about to begin our strategic planning process in the course of 2025, which by the end of the year will hopefully have produced a formal strategic plan to guide us over the next few years. So that's really exciting, but something that I still kind of just have an ask for all of you. We are forming committees, 3 of them, to kind of go along with the strategic planning process. One of them is a strategic planning committee. There's a number of individuals who've already volunteered to be a part of that committee. I want to just keep it open. If folks want to join either that committee of strategic planning, you are more than welcome. The other 2 committees are focused on our formal concerns for this year, one being affordable housing and the other being community violence prevention. So I'd like to begin doing the kind of formal meetings for those committees in the course of January. So let's say if you were interested in joining one of those committees, please let me know in the course of the next week. So by this time next week, next Wednesday, if you haven't joined a committee, not saying you'll be out of luck. We will probably still accept you if you just decide you'd love to join a little bit late, but please let me know if you'd like to join one of our committees that will be meeting in the course of the next year. Again, that's strategic planning or affordable housing or community violence prevention. And so that's could have all sorts of other updates, but we really want to focus on Samantha's presentation and questions and discussion after that. And the only, in that sense, the only addition I would make to the agenda, and this would probably be my fault in the first place, but for that questions and answers, discussion, action steps, that's really all of us, right? Not just Samantha or myself, but really all of us to be a part of that discussion. So thanks to everyone for being here, especially all of our guests. Really hope that you continue being a part of Market. Thanks to everyone. So from there,
Okay. Are you ready for me to introduce Samantha?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So it is my there is a bio of Samantha in your delegate council announcement, but after looking at the site and watching all the videos and reading all the articles, that just wasn't a sufficient introduction for me. So I wrote my own. It is a great privilege to introduce Samantha Searls, the program director for Ignite Peace. I encourage you to visit the Ignite Peace website to learn more about their work. There's a great article on Samantha in the Inquirer, as she was a 2023 Inquirer Woman of the Year. That is so awesome. As the article states, Samantha was raised to take care of others. That just melted my heart. I just love that quote. Ignite Peace is a nonprofit organization that educates and advocates for peaceful, nonviolent solutions to local and national issues like the death penalty, immigration, and human trafficking. Samantha runs the group's immigration justice program, which works to identify, call attention to, and organize around issues facing Greater Cincinnati's immigrant population. After many years of working in the nonprofit sector as a community organizer, consultant, and program specialist, Samantha said she finally found her niche in public education. Samantha said the stars aligned when she was offered the position of program director for Ignite Peace in 2017. Her focus on coalition building, advocacy, and community doesn't end with Ignite Peace. The Northwest Ohio native has also been involved with a large number of organizations, including the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Greater Cincinnati, Archdiocese of Cincinnati's Immigration Task Force, Communities United for Action, End Slavery Cincinnati, Give Back Cincinnati, and Immigrant Dignity Coalition and Working in a Neighborhood, all of which have benefited from her efforts. Please welcome Samantha Searls.
Holy cow, Rowan.
I can't give you a 1 second introduction, not after all that work.
You're making me blush over here. Oh my gosh. Wow. It's a pleasure to talk to you all today. I feel like I know about half of you, which is awesome from different things of being involved. I myself attend Clifton United Methodist Church, so that's why Jan was trying to throw me under the bus for like get me to sign up to do something I didn't sign up for. But I'm absolutely happy to be here with you today, and in an attitude of hope, and in an attitude of anticipation of what's going to happen to our immigrant community over the next few years. So I prepared some slides. I'm going to share my screen, and I see this. I think the session's being recorded. I did get a question. I'm happy to share the slides afterwards. I just need to clean them up a little bit because they're like select slides from a giant PowerPoint. So you don't need all the slides. But it's interesting that you read that poem, Roland, because that's the poem that is on the front of all my presentations. And for those of you who don't know Ignite Peace, you may know us as IJPC, the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. We rebranded a couple of summers ago because everyone always messed up our name, messed up the acronyms, and so we decided to go for something a little bit more zingy. And our mission is to educate and advocate for peace, to challenge unjust systems, and to promote the creation of a nonviolent society. So we're a little bit different from other nonprofits in the fact that we don't serve traditional clients. Our clients is the community at large. Specifically, we do our work through a framework of nonviolence and anti-racism that really dictates our approach to solving social issues. If you're interested in our nonviolence work, we actually offer nonviolence trainings. One is happening tonight, and we also go out to different groups to do nonviolence training. And if you're interested in our anti-racism work, we have a wonderfully edited docu-series, a documentary of a people's history of race and racism in Cincinnati. So if you haven't seen it yet, it is phenomenal to hear these stories of race and resilience that our textbooks don't teach us, that in a hyper-local context to Cincinnati. And we will be having a public screening of that film in February, and all that information should be on our website. But through these frameworks, we work on justice issues, because not only do we educate the community about them, but we also run advocacy campaigns. And so I run our immigration justice program, and I have a counterpart named Becky Baker who runs our criminal justice program. Our criminal justice work has traditionally been around ending the death penalty in Ohio, but we recently have expanded that view into jails and prisons and conditions within, and sentencing issues and all that jazz. So if you're interested in that issue, please contact my colleague Becky. And some of you may have heard that we got a new executive director who began in August. Her name is Shannon Hughes, and she spent the last few years at Xavier University's Center for Faith and Justice. So now she's our executive director, and she's been doing great so far, and I'm really honored to be working with her. And the last introduction I'll do, and just to remind you, Hannah Anderson is here. She is my graduate student intern from Aurora University, just outside of Chicago, studying for a master's of social work and master's of public administration, public health, I forget. So feel free to correct me in the chat. What'd you say?
Public administration.
Administration, yes. And so the immigration work and all of our work does education. So we do interactive events, presentations, and discussions. We also do coalition building and community organizing around these issues, which then leads to direct and grassroots lobbying. And we tend to host a rally, protest, or vigil or two. And we haven't done that recently, but we're about to ramp all that up. I mainly, though, want to tell you about our work through the Immigrant Dignity Coalition. So this is a coalition that was founded after Trump was elected the first time in December of 2016. So it has been around for over 8 years. I myself have worked at Ignite Peace for 8 years. So when he started, I started. And this coalition has now grown to 50 organizational members. I don't believe Mark is one of them, so you should join. And our mission at the coalition is to inform, connect, and mobilize as a coalition. So we get together once a month to inform each other about what's going on with our local immigrant community. We then connect people to solve problems that's facing our immigrant community. And then we mobilize, for policy change and to try to stop these unjust systems from hurting the most vulnerable among us. I find great value in this group because as a white woman who speaks English and is a citizen and whose ancestors have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years, I feel a deep responsibility to do my work in deep relationship with the immigrant community itself. That's how this work gets done. So anything I do at Ignite Peace is always informed by the coalition and the leaders within it. But we meet the fourth Wednesday of every month, and that is it's a week from today is our next meeting, the 22nd from 6:30 to 8 at Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church. It's also a hybrid meeting, so there's a Zoom component, and we do offer simultaneous interpretation into Spanish and French. So if you know folks in the community who are immigrants and that are fed up with how they're being treated. We would love them to join us and help us build power to make the community better for everyone. So it is not a place to go for direct services, although a lot of service providers attend, but it is a great place for people to take leadership and to take action to make things better for the community. So my plan with you today is to begin with some general terms that we use at Ignite Peace to explain how the immigration system works, because I can't tell you about changes if you don't know how the system works, is supposed to work. So we're going to do terms first, then we will talk about the expected changes, the things that we expect from the the Trump administration. And then at the end, I want to talk about some of the work the coalition is doing in ways that you can plug in. Now, if you've seen this presentation before, you'll know all the answers, but I think it's good for repetition. Usually I make this part interactive, but because we're short on time, I'm just going to go ahead and define these terms for you today. Again, just so we're using the same language. And after I define a few terms, I'll pause for questions about those things. So that way we can intersperse the questions to allow us to maybe go beyond my allotted time, so we can go into that Q&A section as we go. So the first, this right here is Samantha's path to citizenship. This is my simplified version of the immigration system and how it works. So you can see in the top left, the word citizen is up there at the top. That is the end goal for many people. Being a US citizen has a lot of rights and privileges, including being able to vote, including being able to run for office, as well as having access to government programs when you fall on hard times, like SNAP benefits, food benefits, rental assistance, Section 8, those type of programs are available to US citizens. Now, people become citizens one of two ways. They either are born on US soil. That's how I got citizenship. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. But I say US soil because that also covers military bases abroad. So if there's a military family in another country that has a child, that base is considered US soil, so that child gets citizenship. If you're not born on US soil, you have to go through a process called naturalization in order to become a citizen. Many of you might be familiar with the process of naturalization because it has the citizenship test, which is hard for many average Americans to fill out. The naturalization process includes a lot of paperwork, background checks, and money to go through. But at the end of it, you take an oath and you become a citizen of the United States. Now, in order for immigrants to enter into the naturalization process, they have to have certain immigration documents and go through certain steps first. We have two programs that we have to admit immigrants into the United States. One is the Green Card program and the other is the Visa program. The main difference between a Green Card and a Visa is how long you have permission to stay. So folks with Green Cards are usually here because they have family here, or they have a job lined up, or they won the lottery. There's actually a diversity lottery. And Green Card holders are often labeled LPR, lawful permanent residents. So the word permanent is key there. They're given to folks who aim to stay in the United States for a long period of time, perhaps permanently. So those are Green Card holders. The Green Cards do expire kind of like driver's licenses, but you don't have to take your driver's test every once in a while. You just have to renew the paperwork. Visas, however, are time-bound and for specific purposes. So there are immigrant visas for people who intend to live here permanently, but perhaps don't qualify for a green card for one reason or another, or they're here for a temporary amount of time, hoping to adjust their status to be more permanent. So we have immigrant visas, which are like seasonal farm workers, and there's so many different types of visas. Then we have non-immigrant visas, which are folks who are here for a temporary amount of time and plan to return to their country once their visa is done. So that includes student visas, people who come here to study. And that also includes tourist visas, people who are here to either get medical care and advice or go to Disney World. So that is the difference, is time bound. Now I want to pause here to see if anyone has any questions about visas, green cards, or citizenship. And there's a lot of you, so you might just have to unmute and speak because I don't think I can see everyone to call on you. Okay, you can always use the chat box if you have questions.
Samantha,
Yes, Jan.
I was surprised to find out that there's such a thing as a sports visa.
A sports visa?
That's the baseball players that come from Latin American countries, especially, have to get the sports visa.
Oh yes, there's all kinds of visas for entertainers and celebrities. So I want to continue on, and the next bit I want to talk about are refugees and asylees. These are two programs we have to admit people who are fleeing danger and can no longer live in their countries. They are two separate programs. Now, the word refugee has kind of been thrown around as like a catch-all phrase to mean anyone in danger, but they are two separate programs, and the main differences are this. The refugee program is ran by the United Nations, and they monitor global situations and go out to those areas and set up refugee camps just outside of the conflict area, preparing to welcome in vulnerable people who are fleeing. It's at those refugee camps where folks are processed and given that protected status. And then they go through a process called resettlement, and that's how they come to the United States. So the refugee program, United Nations, they get their protected status before they come here. The asylum program is ran by individual countries, and not every country has one. And every country can set their own rules and processes. Our process right now, today, which is probably going to change next week, is that a vulnerable person can come to the United States and apply for asylum and ask permission to stay. So they have to come here first. And so that's the other difference. So the United Nations is the refugee program. They get their status before they come here. The asylum program is the United States, and they get their status after they come here. Those are the big differences. However, some people say once the asylum seekers are approved, then they become refugees, but that really isn't a true statement because the refugee program has a lot of benefits and support from our government in getting them resettled, whereas asylum seekers do not have the same level of support. Once refugees get here and asylees get approved, they do have access to green cards and are now on this path to citizenship. A lot of the folks that you have heard about at the border are asylum seekers. And a lot of the border conversation over the past 2 years is to manage the number of people who are asking for protections. And so the border was actually closed for a long time while they tried to help the people that they already had in the system. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has questions about refugees or asylees.
Dave Teetsart.
Hi, Dave.
On asylum, do they not have to be like escaping persecution or something like that? Have a justification for their seeking asylum?
Yes, there's a lot of criteria that they have to meet in order to have a credible fear claim and to get that protection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sam, what about
Yes.
what about people who go to embassies in other countries, then to the U.S. embassy in another country that want to come to the United States?
So that changes every 5 seconds. So I'm not sure what it is right now. But for many people, asking at the border is the only way to get asylum. But I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule. I also should have said before we start this, I am not an immigration lawyer. I'm an educator. And so we are taking a very big look at the immigration system. Some of you on this call know way more than me. And so I just wanted to also mention if I missed something, it's because I'm trying to take this big view. So the last clouds down here I want to talk about before we talk about Trump and what's happening is the big undocumented cloud over there at the bottom of your screen. So at Ignite Peace, we use the term undocumented because it describes the situation that they're in. They are immigrants that do not have visas or green cards. They don't have immigration documents, plain and simple. A lot of, especially the general public, call this group illegal immigrants. We chose not to. One, for the educational purpose of explaining their situation. They are actually not, most of them are not committing any, violating any criminal code. So the whole idea of being illegal just isn't logistically right. And then also that word has been used to vilify this community. So we don't want individual people's presence in the United States to be illegal or unlawful, because that is how World War II started. So the undocumented community is undocumented for one of two reasons. One is they had status and they lost it. So a visa expired and they didn't know they had to renew, or they no longer qualify, or they don't have legal advice, or limited English proficiency, so they can't fill out the paperwork. There's lots of reasons why people lose documents after they have them, or they entered without permission or entered without authorization. And there's lots of reasons why for that. It could be that they don't qualify for visas or green cards. You kind of have to have family or a job here in order to move to the United States. And if you're poor and with no ties, then it's very, very hard. There's also wait lists and backlogs. And for someone who's desperate to feed their family, a lot of people make that choice. So that is and as you see, they are not on the path to citizenship. Often when people say, why don't they get in line? There is no line for them to get in. There's no way for them to apply for a visa or a green card once they're already here. Now, I mentioned I'm taking a big view right now. Some of you are going to be like, well, yes, there's ways. Of course, this is a very complicated system. Undocumented people perhaps could get a visa if they are victims of heinous crimes. Often law enforcement will sponsor a visa for an undocumented person to cooperate with the investigation. And so that is a way that undocumented folks have gotten visas, as being victims of crimes or human trafficking. There also is a way to get papers through marriage to a US citizen, but that process is definitely going to change because sometimes, depending on the officer you're talking to, the undocumented spouse might have to leave the country while the US spouse does all the paperwork and tries to bring them back. And sometimes the undocumented person, if they have been on like ICE's radar, immigration enforcement's radar, they're banned for up to 10 years before they can come back. So getting papers through marriage is very, very difficult. The last thing I'll talk about before I take questions and before we move into policy is this tiny little cloud in the corner, which is like all the other immigration programs. You know, Congress is not the most efficient, and they have not been able to change our immigration system law since like 2002 was like probably the most significant immigration law that has passed. So they do it in a piecemeal fashion. So they have all these programs for all these specific groups of people with specific qualifications. And the three I want to tell you about are DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. You all are pretty familiar with that. They also are called Dreamers. They came to the United States when they were children and their families were undocumented. So DACA is protection against deportation and a work permit, but it is not a green card or a visa. They are not on the path to citizenship. So it's a temporary program. The second one is called TPS, Temporary Protected Status. And this is for undocumented people who are already here and their home countries are in turmoil. So it would be dangerous for our government to deport them there. So countries like Haiti and Venezuela and Nicaragua, I believe Congo is also covered, Ukraine, Afghanistan. They have TPS status, which gives them permission to work and protection against deportation, because if our government would send them back to their country, they would be in danger. Lastly, SIJS, special immigrant juvenile status. And that is for undocumented youth who come by themselves. So our government views this as their families have abandoned them because they immigrated by themselves, and then they are now our responsibility as these children. The children also get protection against deportation and work permits, and are eligible to adjust their status once they turn 18, because the idea is they can't go back to their home countries because their families have abandoned them. That's how the government sees it. So that was a lot of blabbing. I apologize for all of that. I want to pause one more time to see if anybody has any questions on how the system is supposed to work now.
Samantha?
Yes, Brewster.
Who has the authority to determine what countries, people from which countries would qualify for TPS?
The Secretary of Department of Homeland Security.
Can, without Congress approving or backing that, can make the determination. Is that correct?
Correct. They do it on their own without Congress.
You anticipate that Trump's new Secretary of Homeland Security will delete Haiti from that list?
So TPS is reviewed every few years anyways to look at the status of the country. That's why President Biden has renewed a bunch of them in this past week. So legally they have to wait until their protections run out before the executive branch can look at it again. And I do anticipate them ending TPS for Haiti. That's usually the situation of everyone in Springfield. If you all saw that news story a couple months ago.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But that would be in 2026, right?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head when Haiti's TPS expires, but I think they do have some time still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions on how it's supposed to work? All right, we're going to move ahead to the hard stuff. Quick civics lesson for you. And the reason I'm doing this is to talk about how we as people who care can influence our government on lots of different levels. So the legislative branch of government is obviously the one that most of us are familiar with in terms of calling your congressperson about a specific law or a budget item. As you know, Congress is controlled by one party, and so they will be very efficient at overhauling a lot of immigration laws. This is something that President Trump did not have last time. And so we anticipate a lot of anti-immigrant legislation, not only fixing how our current laws are implemented, but changing our current laws to their core. We created the green card system. We can uncreate the green card system. I'm not saying that's going away, but I'm saying that is something that goes through Congress. And so that is something that we're going to watch out for a lot. There's going to be a lot of call your legislators. And I just want to quickly say, the Ohio Sisters Justice Network, we came up with a phrase, be a gnat. So even if your representatives do not represent your views, your senators or your representatives, be a gnat in their ear to keep calling them and telling them that you don't agree with what they're doing. It's very important. We cannot give up. Then we have the executive branch, which is President Trump and his cabinet and all the leaders of the federal agencies, like the Department of Homeland Security. They are charged with implementing the laws passed by Congress. So they decide the rules and regulations. And a lot of their rules and regulations are subjected to something called federal rulemaking. And so those rules have to be subjected to public comment. So it's basically like, here's how the Department of Homeland Security thinks that it should implement this law. What does the public think? What do experts in the field think? Is this the right interpretation of this law and how we should go about doing things? And so there will be a lot of campaigns that say public comment or submit a comment. The word comment there is what's been used in the advocacy space to try to delay the implementation of these new rules. We were very successful in doing that during the first Trump administration. For example, they wanted to double all the costs of applying for all of this. And we delayed that so much that it went into the Biden administration and then they just changed it. So that is a tactic amongst advocates. And lastly is the judicial branch of government, which is less influenced. But that is where private citizens, legal organizations, nonprofit organizations can sue either the legislative or executive branch for how they are, but if a law violates the Constitution, or if someone's interpretation of the law is incorrect. So our partners at ACLU and a lot of those legal spaces really need your support because there's going to be a lot of lawsuits happening. And then they change policy through court decisions, and the court decides if a policy is in line with the Constitution or not and how it should be implemented. Any questions on this slide? Okay. The next one is the top things I think he will do in his first year or so. I do expect workplace raids, which basically they look at large employers or employers with a lot of immigrant visas and check to see if those visas and that paperwork is valid. And if it isn't, then they do an investigation and then show up one day as a raid to catch people by surprise and detain the workers and find the employer and take them to court, and it's a mess. We haven't had any workplace raids in this region for a long time. There was a big one in 2010 at Koch Foods in Butler County, but hasn't been one since. I do expect them to resume. There were a ton of workplace raids in around like Sandusky, Ohio, and Cleveland. During his last administration, and there were workplace raids around the country. I wrote the word sweeps there. This is kind of like being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So often undocumented workers carpool to work. And during the last Trump administration, we saw a lot of those sweeps of places, people waiting for work, or ICE officers would come up to them and try to get them to admit that they were here without papers and then sweep them up into the detention system. We also currently have a program called, Selected Secure Sensitive Locations, where ICE is not allowed to go in and look for somebody. We expect that sensitive location policy to go away very quickly. So that means that ICE will be allowed in schools, churches, hospitals, and courthouses, and other places, which last Trump administration, they still kept that policy, but there's been talk that that will go away. Legal programs like TPS and DACA will likely end. DACA is already in the court system and is headed towards the Supreme Court and will likely end anyway because of the Supreme Court. I expect the border to be closed to asylum seekers, and I expect our asylum program to essentially be ended completely. By adding more rules and regulation. President Biden actually made the system harder in his administration. So I feel like I haven't had a break for 8 years and it's about to get worse. But Biden changed some rules that said, if you travel through a country that has an asylum program, then you need to apply and be denied there first before you can come up and ask us for asylum, which cut a lot of people off. They also changed the fact that Border Patrol agents could ask if they were in danger, fleeing danger, and now they can't ask anymore, and the immigrant just has to know to make that claim and start that process, which is very hard to educate folks about. There's also restrictions on lawyers. So that's probably going to happen. Mandatory detention is another thing. With the asylum process, when people come to the border and they're screened with their credible fear interview, they're often released to go live with friends and family while their case goes through the court system, and it's likely they won't be released. And that's where we saw family separation and detention camps last time. And also changing the law to criminalize people and try to get more people into the deportation pipeline, because they will probably look for folks with like violent felonies first and then other kinds of felonies. They'll still be the wrong place, wrong time kind of sweeps, but folks that have visas and green cards are relatively not a target this first go around. And lastly is each level of law enforcement has its own set of rules and laws to enforce. And so like local law enforcement is in charge of local laws, enforcing local laws. Our state sheriff or state deputies do state laws. And so this would then engage local law enforcement to enforce federal laws, which they don't typically do. So there's so much more. But these are the hot topics that we have been talking about in the immigration space. I shall pause for questions to see if there's anything you heard in the news that you thought was going to happen. Any questions or thoughts?
I have a question. It's kind of a big question.
Okay.
A lot of people make a lot of money on the labor of undocumented immigrants. And these kinds of workplace raids and sweeps will hurt the bottom line of a lot of businesses, which often are owned by Republicans. And in addition, in a lot of industries that rely on undocumented labor, like the dairy industry, prices will go up. And so I'm wondering how you think that will affect the actions, these kinds of actions, and if you think it will be in particularly weaponized, like what places get raided based on blue states and blue localities or businesses that are not so supportive of certain people in power.
Yeah, ownerships of these companies definitely comes into play. I think President Trump said a couple weeks ago that he has a lot of workers with a certain type of visa, which actually made his base mad. And but I bet Mar-a-Lago will not be subject to a workplace raid. So I do think that will play in a piece of it. There's something else I was going to say, but I lost it. Comments and questions?
Do we anticipate that the separation of families will resume?
Yes, I do, Nan. Yes, I do. And the reason for that, the reason why family separation was happened was there are protections for children in detention. And so they had to follow those rules for the child's welfare, but those kind of protections aren't there for adults. And so they would take the children from the adults, so that way they weren't breaking the rules about the conditions for the children and that's putting their children in their own place. But in doing so, they legally separated from the parents, and a lot of people signed over their rights and didn't know. I do anticipate that for returning. Yes, Mark.
What can we do locally in terms of affecting the whole situation? One thing I think that, speaking as a white male, I've stopped grieving. I've stopped grieving the fact that the corporate board is all white men. I've stopped grieving the fact that the board is now diverse. My community is now diverse. And I've learned to let go of that grief and embrace the diversity around us. I think there's a lot of white men who are still grieving.
Thank you for that comment. Ariel.
So a lot of people probably saw Timothy Snyder's post a few weeks ago about the moral erosion that we're all going to see, where we're going to be pressured to inform on people and for local law enforcement to be acting against their principles. I think our sheriff will be under a lot of pressure in Hamilton County. And so I'm wondering how we can build up our backbone. This is an open question, to not be part of that turning on people.
Yes. So some of the folks in the coalition have had conversations with Sheriff McGuffey, and she has said that she won't hold people on her own will for ICE, but if ICE asks her to hold people, she will. So we have some work to do with her. And I think that we need to encourage our advocates and champions to be brave. I had this conversation with a couple of council members. City Council is planning to do things behind the scenes and not publicly because they are fearful that their sanctuary city status will result in the loss of state and federal funding.
Right.
So I told a council member, I said, the community needs you to be brave right now. And so we'll see how that plays out as well. But I think that both sides of the aisle have been really harsh on immigrants for the past 4 years. And we don't have many advocates left out there that will be bold and will say immigrants are a good thing and they help our community. Unfortunately, I've reached out to Congressman Lansman's office and he had a survey or something. And instead of the concern being immigration, the concern was border security. And so there's already that narrative there of danger. So we have a lot of work to do to encourage our allies to be bold. I just want to do a quick time check, Danny or whoever. I saw on the agenda you end at 1:15, but it is 1 o'clock. So I have one more slide to get to and just wanted to see if we should continue questions or if I should do that slide, what you think is best for the use of our time.
I would say finish your slide and if we have a couple more minutes for questions. But I would like to see you be able to finish your presentation.
Yes. Okay. Two more slides. I think this might have been mentioned in the chat or it was a direct message to me. The immigrant legislation has already begun. The House passed a bill last week, HR 29, and I don't think it's passed the Senate yet, but the vote is supposed to happen anytime now. Senate Bill 5. This is colloquially known as the Lake and Riley Act. This is a bipartisan bill that I don't like because it empowers law enforcement to basically racially profile people if they think that they're undocumented and throw them in detention without option for bail or bond. So even if you're not arrested or charged with a crime, you could be put away. So this is a very problematic bill. And so this bill was named after Laken Riley, who is a woman who was attacked and murdered by someone who was undocumented. And they're weaponizing her horrible experience to punish anyone because I believe he didn't have any violent convictions. And so they're looking at nonviolent convictions and trying to criminalize more people. So it's a huge concern. Lastly, I want to tell you what we're doing in Cincinnati to give a little bit of hope. So in November, we called a community meeting. We opened up the coalition meeting to anyone who wanted to come. And between online and in person, we had 200 people show up. And those 200 people broke out into 6 teams, both on Zoom and in person. And these teams come from a resource from Eastern Tennessee. Eastern Tennessee had a huge workplace raid in 2018 and then put together this amazing rapid response toolkit to help other communities prepare for mass enforcement. So you can see our teams on the screens. Each of the teams have leaders and they meet in between coalition meetings and give reports at coalition meetings. So this is where to plug in. The volunteer coordination team, for example, eventually will be tasked with creating an input system just to kind of index all of the skills and resources we have connections to, whether that's space to house someone, whether that's space to have a meeting, or a large space for an emergency gathering to try to reunite families after a raid. Or if that's I'm available to drive people to medical appointments. Any type of thing that you could offer to this vulnerable community, we want to know about. So that intake process isn't quite ready yet because this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we're doing our best to do this work in a fair and just way. And Legal Services has been busy. They are finalizing an emergency preparedness packet for families to fill out, which has paperwork in there like a power of attorney. So if the head of the household is taken and they need to give temporary custody to someone to take care of their child, they can fill out that paperwork in advance. As well as know your rights presentations to empower people to be ready and to know what information they have to provide if they're contacted by ICE and other things that they can do to protect themselves. So I encourage you to reach out to the coalition, reach out to me if you want to join one of these teams, or if you want the Zoom link to the meeting next week, or you can just show up to Mount Auburn. And we need you. We need your resources. We need your expertise, and we need your passion. Because I mentioned, I feel like I've been fighting for 8 years, and we're about to go into another round, and we need new people to join us and to survive through this. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy. And do we have some time for more final questions?
Excellent. Thank you.
We can take two more questions, and then we're gonna hand over to Danny for next action steps and to wrap it up. Go ahead, Dr. Ford.
I just wanted to say thank you. Excellent.
My pleasure. Questions we didn't get to earlier or new ones? Yes, Miss Martha. You are muted, my friend.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I just wondered about the organization Refugee Connect and if you have direct affiliation with them, or maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about them.
Sure. I believe they're a supporting member of ours, which means they support the mission of the Immigrant Dignity Coalition, but may not have the capacity to participate fully. We have a lot of organizations under that category, but they are not a refugee resettlement program. That's Catholic Charities is our local refugee resettlement program. So they try to supplement on top of the support that they get through the refugee resettlement program, because a lot of that government funding and support does not last doesn't last nearly long enough. And refugees also come against all kinds of issues when they're trying to start a new life here. So they're a great organization.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we want to thank you so much, Samantha, for your incredible presentation. I think we've all been very touched by it. And Daniel, we're going to turn over to you. Martha, did you still have another question? Your hand's
No,
up.
I'll lower it. Yeah.
Okay, and Daniel, we're going to turn over to you for any last minute comments, next steps, any announcements.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, on behalf of Mark and all of us here present, thank you so much, Samantha. That was a very, very informative presentation. And not just informative, but really appreciate the attitude of hope that you're bringing to this. Again, your work with Ignite Peace, with the Immigrant Dignity Coalition, is very inspiring for us at Mark. And Mark has done a lot of work in the past on immigration. This year, it was just kind of a quirk of schedules and our transition process. We do not have immigration as a formal concern for this year, but here we are dedicating a Delegates Council meeting to this topic. We've got a lot of people who are really enthusiastic about working on this topic. So all of your requests and you're encouraging us to be involved. Believe us that we will take them to heart. We will discuss this. And just real directly to one of your things, I also noticed, on the Immigrant Dignity Coalition, I was like, where is Mark? Where are we on this? But I know that historically the policy of Mark, whether formal or informally, was that as a coalition, we don't necessarily join other coalitions at a formal level. But that too is something that I think we can definitely revisit and discuss. And at the very least, even looking at those working groups, a policy and advocacy working group, that would be right up our alley. We are, historically have worked very closely with Sheriff McGuffey, with city council members, with CPD. And I think that we would be very well positioned and very passionate about continuing to work in those areas on this topic, moving forward and trying to, be on one hand, proactive with, getting our responses in order, what could we potentially do in all of these different scenarios, but also, being flexible and being able to pivot when things happen. So yeah, there's a lot more that I think that we as MARC need to discuss and need to be informed about, but this is an excellent first step. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge. And again, we will be discussing a lot of these issues and seeing how we as MARC can be involved in this topic moving forward. So I don't know if anybody else has any other comments, thoughts, questions. We still do have 5 minutes, so feel free to keep chiming in. And if folks say or are thinking, hey, no, MARC does need to do this. We need to, be involved in this. Now is a great time. I think that also, as we talked about it right at the beginning, as I mentioned, this is also a time for MARC to, where we are rethinking who we are as an organization and what we need to be doing. So, yeah, floor is back open for our last 4 minutes, being respectful of everybody's time.
Carol, do you want to read your comment?
Brewster Rhodes actually made a comment that I was echoing, so maybe he would be a better person to speak.
I'm sorry. I was just suggesting some action steps that maybe MARC or maybe the coalition has already considered, but just the idea of putting out a call to action of conscience that basically says, here's what we are concerned about, and here's what we encourage happen or not happen, and try to get as many people in the region, the community, all the adjudicatories, and then every doggone organization and elected official try to get as much unity around a statement that spells out what the concern is and what the action requested or called for is. Just an idea. I think people would take leadership from you all.
Andrew Musgrave is on this call, and he just said in the chat that he's one of the leads for the policy and advocacy team in rapid response. So it's good that we're all in the same space having this conversation. Bob, did you have your hands up?
I did. The call to conscience is a great thing to do, and we should do it. We should particularly then have signatories of some of the major members of MARC, the adjudicatories. Those names are important. The Archdiocese, the Episcopal Diocese, several others. Those names should be there. And it's important for them to be on the line right now. Definitely from us, the Catholic community, that's core to who we're supposed to be. So anyway, Andrew, you know that, and you talk to the Archbishop, you can help that process.
Ariel?
Samantha, you had publicized the 2 regional gatherings, one of which is in Dayton on the 25th. Could you say more about that and say if you're planning something like that in Cincinnati, or if we can help do something like that here?
I sent an email out to the Immigrant Dignity Coalition yesterday about 2 regional gatherings. One is in Columbus, happening this Saturday, and the other is the Saturday after that, on the 25th, at the University of Dayton. The one in Columbus is actually for people of faith. So 1 second, I can pull that information up here. But I plan on attending and participating in the Dayton one because it's kind of like a general call to the public and to immigrants themselves. There's going to be Know Your Rights conversations. There's going to be emergency planning. It's just going to be a little bit of everything, and it's an all day on Saturday the 25th. And so I think the best bet, because time is slow and I for some reason cannot find it. Oh, here we are. Let me go ahead and put this stuff in the chat about the 2 conferences. And I plan on going to the Dayton one to kind of see how it goes, to then perhaps do one here in Cincinnati, but that has not been on our priority list. We've been really trying to get to the immigrant communities themselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I wanted to say also that the United Methodist Church, coming out at the conference level, which is now the entire state of Ohio, has updated their book of discipline that speaks on social issues and made a statement about the immigration crisis. And there is an organization within the conference, I have the information, that is trying to be proactive in protecting immigrants during this. I don't know if you've seen that stuff, but I can send it to you. sure other people's adjudicatories probably have made statements and made claims to the advocates for protecting.
Jan, I caught like 2% of what you said because your microphone isn't very good. So send me what you got, and I'm happy to share it.
Okay, anyone else? Just want to remind you that our annual meeting is Wednesday, February 12th, in person at United Way Convening Center, and it's from 11:30 to 1:30. So if there's nothing else, for the good of the order, thank you very much for attending and have a wonderful day.